Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for the next installment in our new figure showcase series. And if you're new to the channel, this series just lets me show you a new figure I'm adding into the collection and lets me give you my thoughts and do a mini review of sorts. The hope for those honestly is just to let you see everything in as much detail as possible and just give you my general impressions. I'm not hoping to sway you in any one way, but I do hope if you're considering getting one of these figures that you might find these a little informative. So for today's installment, we're going to be looking at the latest EXO-6 release, which is their Captain Liam Shaw from Star Trek Picard Season 3. This marks the second figure we've gotten from the line, following the release of Admiral Picard, which is a figure I really liked. So look, needless to say, I loved this season of Picard, easily the highlight of that series and possibly of all current modern iterations of Trek, be it Discovery or even Strange New Worlds. Picard Season 3 is a show that I just cannot recommend enough. To me, that was the example of a show that fired on pretty much all cylinders, from the storyline to the acting, the effects, the emotional punches, and even the score. It was just incredible. And part of that, easily the introduction of some new characters like Captain Shaw, the commanding officer of the USS Titan. And to me, he made a hell of an impression. First of all, he's played by a great actor, Todd Stashwick, but his introduction drinking wine and being completely unimpressed by Admiral Picard and Captain Riker, that establishes personality off the bat. Someone who is no nonsense and has no time for the risk-taking that these supposed legends had been taking up to that point. And on top of that, he has a very contentious relationship with Commander 7, up until the end where we realized that there was actually a great deal of respect there. So great character, which is why I'm very excited to have this figure in hand. So look, off the bat, you can tell that this is going to be a relatively short video because there really isn't much here. You get the figure, the standard transporter display base, a few spare hands, and then the phaser pistol and a glass of wine to recreate that really memorable scene, but not much else here. So as is our standard, let's look at the accessories in more detail, and we'll start with the hands. Not many here. You basically get some fists and then some hands designed to hold the wine glass, and the second is designed to hold the phaser pistol. They all look good though and serve the right purposes, and the pegs on the figure are pretty solid, so swapping hands was simple, and I do mention that because I know that swapping can be a little nerve-inducing. So next up, you do get the wine glass, which is done well. Very nice accessory given that it's from his introductory scene in the show, and I think if you do have Picard from the show, you could possibly use this and the bottle of wine that came with that figure as a companion accessory. Look, the glass is just that, a piece of clear plastic that's done well, nothing crazy here, and there is a dark red plastic on the interior that's meant to replicate some wine. That looks pretty good, and I do like the touch where it's slightly sloped at the top, but it does mean you have to pose the glass in the hand a certain way to make it look proper. But overall, nice add to have. Next and final accessory we're getting here is the new style phaser pistol that we also got with Picard. I'll be honest, I wasn't even super keen. I wasn't ever super keen on the phasers from TNG, DS9, or Voyager. So I do like that the designers did revert a little bit more to that classic original series look where you do get a grip. And I like that they modernized it too with the forward guard around the hand. Gives it just enough of a futuristic yet aggressive vibe. And I know Star Trek is supposed to be about exploration, but I do like that subtle change. Paint is great with a nice gray that has some gold accents along the top and at the front of the phaser. Same one we got with Picard again, and as these are standard issue, I'm sure it's not the last time we'll see these for these Picard figures. So now, let's get into the figure, and we're going to start with the sculpt. And look, EXO-6 does have to live up to some raised expectations. The Strange New Worlds Pike and Spock and the Search for Spock Krug were easily the best sculpts they've done to date, and in line with what we would expect with high-end 6-scale companies. I do have to give them credit where it's due. Now this one, I don't think is as good as those, but I think it comes pretty close. Now the likeness is there, but there is just a little something throwing it off, and I do think it's something with the eyes. The paint though on the eyes is great, but again, there's just something a little off, but the rest of the sculpt is amazing. The work on the facial hair in particular, if you do see the figure in hand, is just stunning work. And even with the hair, it feels like we've come such a long way from that original EXO-6 Captain Janeway release from Star Trek Voyager. Hair doesn't feel like it was just plopped down as a piece of plastic. It's just done really well. Paintwork is something else, and it's just a really solid sculpt overall. The rest of the figure is also great. Now, it's still a simpler looking uniform, but like I always tell you, simple isn't always bad. The highlight here is without a doubt the jacket. So he basically has a turtleneck under the jacket, and obviously a bit of a padded suit. The turtleneck collar does hold the captain rank pips, and then the jacket has a nice crimson red on the upper portion that does also include a bit of red piping that goes down the front. And you can see the new com badge design, which is a little more sleek, I guess, than the originals. And I do appreciate that it's an actual molded piece and not screen printed. Now, what makes the jacket cool, in my opinion, is the fact that the red is comprised of very, very small Starfleet deltas. And that's something we've seen a lot in recent Trek. And I continue to be impressed by how EXO-6 was able to deliver on getting these to look so good at such a small scale. The bottom of the jacket does also include some details on the back and sides, almost like a slight elastic band, which is great, and then the pants are just black trousers with a crimson line down the side that ends in the boots, which, unlike classic Trek where you had more dress shoe looking boots, are a little bit more utilitarian, so to speak. So they look like work boots or even combat boots, which to me just makes more sense overall. And the way the jacket opens, it's held in place with some buttons on the interior, and the lapel is held closed with magnets. So you will see, depending on the poses, that sometimes the lower portion of the jacket tends to become undone. It's not the end of the world though, and I do like the slight throwback to the more classic Wrath of Khan era dress uniforms. So that's about it for the figure. As is kind of the norm for a lot of these Trek releases, you're really not getting much, and that's okay. These figures are character based, and a character like Captain Liam Shaw doesn't really come with much other than that glass of wine from a very specific scene, which I do think does work well with this figure. The only other thing I would have loved to have seen here, in the show the officers have a leather jacket that they wear for missions, very similar to the base uniform, but just looked pretty cool. I do get why EXO-6 didn't do that, especially for these secondary characters, since it would have added to the cost. But look, the figure's great, and the only little footnote here, these are not meant to appeal to everyone. These figures are appealing to hardcore fans of the series. I think the Wrath of Khan figures that are going to come out are going to have much more of a broad mass market appeal, given that they're from a movie that was very popular. But here you're really getting Captain Shaw if you like the character. Posability is pretty decent on this guy. Shoulders do feel a little stiff, and you can note that the underlying body is more of an off-the-shelf product, especially at the wrist where you can see the color mismatch between the hands and the underlying body, but that's not going to be a huge issue given that overall the uniform does hide that. But look, a single figure, but a great addition to the Picard Season 3 line, and I'm looking forward to seeing more coming from the show. They teased Vadic, one of the villains, and we know Worf is coming, as well as Captain Seven, so I have a feeling we're in for some great characters here. But for now, Captain Shaw, the great no-nonsense captain of the USS Titan, is in the collection, and he is a very solid addition. So let me know your thoughts on this one, and as always, thanks for watching, and we'll touch base on the next video.